with this 10 years ago. People actually, their favorite videos are the retract videos. It's a good song. I think they love the fact that we actually get them to admit that they're lying. You know, it's pretty cool. Yeah. The question, Tim, do you think that I should take the money or go all the way to a jury verdict?
I think what you should do, if I could recommend something, is you cover your costs, but then you take the money out of it and you create it and you put it in this fund where you protect other people.
Yeah. The people's, what do you call it?
The People's Defamation Defense Fund.
Yeah. When you protect the Redditors and the memers that CNN keeps going after, or the grandma that they doorstop,
Right.
you help those individuals in the fund after recouping some of your initial costs.
You take
That's what I would do.
take the dividends and you start a fund with that.
Well, so the one thing I would say is just, weigh the risks. If the New York Times comes to you and offers apology, retraction, and settlement, and you say no, the judge might tell you to screw off. He might be like, what do you mean you won? They came to you and they said they're going to give you everything you want. So it may be great to get a jury victory. That's only if they fight you all the way. I got to say, we covered this story the other day a couple times, as the story has been emerging. The officer in the Capitol riots, New York Times put out fake information the next day, and I missed this. This is because I trust the New York Times. It was reported in Houston, the officer died of an unrelated stroke. The New York Times didn't change the article until a month and a week or so later. So I don't think the New York Times they're going to resist. I think they're going to resist as much as possible any kind of admitting fault. But I'll tell you this, man, if you get the New York Times to, issue a full retraction, they've done that before for you, haven't they?
That's a win. Yes, we have hundreds of retractions and fractions, including a couple from the New York Times. If they offer to retract the article and apologize, to me that's the case. We win. That's what I wanted in the first place. But they refused to do that.
Right.
And I think they didn't. I think I called their bluff. I think they're like, oh, screw you. And they're not used to people fighting back. They're used to railroading people. And the biggest epiphany for me was because we got Raw Story to retract an entire paragraph. Well, I don't know if you look at Raw Story.
Yeah, of course.
Woke, clickbait, verified sort of situation.
Are they connected to Soros?
I don't know.
Okay.
Raw Story just retracted, Tim, an entire they just made something up. What did they make up, Eric? Raw Story made up an entire paragraph about Project Veritas. Oh, they said that I said that Antifa was behind the Capitol riots.
Right.
I never said that. So our attorney said they just deleted it.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's great. I got a retraction. I'm framing the retracto. But then I thought, for every one of these, there's 50,000 that no one ever got deleted. Yeah. And I think to myself, they should be thanking us for doing a service, but not for Project Veritas, that paragraph would still be on the internet forever, on Wikipedia, cited by other organizations.
Well,
it blows your mind.
Wikipedia for like 7 years claimed I invented a remote control Zeppelin for live broadcasting. I have no idea how, but that's the editorial standard of Wikipedia, I suppose. And Tim Pool, great Zeppelin inventor, so say it Wikipedia.
And the New York Times, in their response to our motion to dismiss, cited Wikipedia in the legal motion.
They really did.
They had footnotes, but James O'Keefe's Wikipedia page says that he's no good. I am not making this up.
You know what?
I'm not making this up.
The great lady hath fallen.
So what do? You got to start this defense fund, and then next time you come on, blow it up on the show, like talk about it, and get people to start investing in it.
Well, we're gonna start by we already sued the New York Times, and we're gonna start suing a few other outlets. I think we're onto something here. Malice, defamation law in the United States.
This is why discovery and depositions are so dangerous to these organizations, because I've been in these private Slack groups. So you guys know what Slack is, right? It's basically Discord for private corporations.
Right.
I have seen these people say things that would get them in very, very serious trouble. I have had, there's one particular instance I cite over and over again about a very prominent individual who now works for the New York Times, who basically told me, hey, we engage in unethical behavior, so don't report on other people doing the same kind of unethical behavior. And I was like, wow, if a story broke and they got sued and that chat was released in Discovery, the company their credibility would be gone forever.
So how's Discovery work? So I've been through this so many times. I'm not an attorney. I've got a few dozen working for us. I dropped out of law school. You do a motion to dismiss. You pass this motion to dismiss. That's when these companies start settling lawsuits, like in the case of Nick Covington, or Nick from the Covington. Nick Salmon, thank you. Once you get past motion to dismiss, then the companies realize you are headed towards discovery. A deposition is where they videotape. They videotape. For 12 hours, I'm under oath, and the lawyers pepper me with questions. They look at the emails, they get everything related to the litigation, so I can open up the New York Times' emails, I can look at every communication. It's against the law for them to delete emails about me. They have to preserve their records about me. And by the way, a deposition, nobody likes it. It's very uncomfortable. Unethical people, which we are not unethical at Project Veritas, we always behave like people are watching, fear the deposition. Have you ever been deposed? Negative. Have you ever been deposed?
In not in this kind of context.
You ever been deposed?
I plead the fifth.
You plead the fifth.
That's a yes.
So I've been deposed like a dozen times. I've been to federal jury trials. I understand this process, and it's very uncomfortable. I mean, I've also been arrested by the FBI, so there's that. But I've been through all this, and they're not used to this. They're not used to this, and it's almost like a form of content when you get the executive editor of the New York Times in a chair under oath. It's almost like he's required to answer questions, and
their brain probably hurts because they're legally bound to tell the truth.
they have to,
And their brain isn't used to that, so the withered husk in their brain that is the truth center is like struggling to function.
It's like pouring water on a robot. It's like malfunction.
When you do discovery, you start pulling from the emails. If you find like different infractions of this guy said defamed you, this guy defamed you, this guy defamed you, do they then become separate?
It's so beautiful. In the New York Times case already, the reporter's name in that case, guys, New York Times reporter, Maggie Astor, wrote an article. This is so beautiful. In the article, she said that Project Veritas relies solely on anonymous sources in the Minnesota video. When you can see the people's faces, it was just preposterous. It was self-evidently incorrect. And then under oath, Maggie Astor changed her tune. Under oath, she already printed a retracto. In the motion, she already changed the fact. She said, no, many of the people are named. So under oath, they changed their tune.
Well, so that's
a retraction.
Well, that's a victory for you.
That's a victory already.
They've now admitted the facts are different from what they've proposed.
They've already admitted.
But she knows. She knows.
She knows it, and the judge knows it, and the jury knows it. I'm telling you, this is the People's Litigation Defense Fund. They've got to settle with you. They've got to.
But what concerns me is the damages that girl went on CNN in front of, 100,000 people. Do you have how many people were watching that?
1 million
episode?
people.
And they said that you were spreading false information.
Bro, this is what they did to me when I got invited to the White House. So me and Bill, and you were there as well. When we got invited to the White House, the Today Show showed my picture and claimed that I was a proponent of the Seth Rich conspiracy theory. They made it up. Because what happened was Fox News reported definitively, it was Fox Business, I believe, information about the Seth Rich conspiracy theory. I then read that and said, wow, well, I don't believe it's entirely true, but we'll see what happens. Because I read a story that was later retracted, they ignore all of the context around the fact that it was retracted. Then I came out when it was retracted and said, wow, the story was fake the whole time. Who would have thought? But simply by reading a story that later got retracted, they claimed I was pushing a conspiracy theory. You see how that works? That's a great trick because they'll argue, but it is true. It was a conspiracy theory. Yeah, but at the time, the context is relevant. It was a definitively reported story from Fox Business, later retracted. I report on the retraction. That's the dirt of these organizations. They know it's not true. They know it's a manipulation. Think about every single journalist who pushed the insane Russiagate lies. Are they all conspiracy theorists now?
Well, there's a great book called Disinformation by a Soviet bloc dissident, which I tweeted this picture. This guy died yesterday. I can't even pronounce his name, but he wrote a book called Disinformation. He was a defector, and he talks about how disinformation works in the Soviet Union, or in his case, Romania, I believe. Spell out his name. Ion, Mihai, Pachepa. He died yesterday. He wrote a book called Disinformation. It's like $1,000 on Amazon because everyone's trying to buy it right now. I have a copy of it. And he says that there's always a little kernel of truth in their disinformation. And they always go back to that. It's mostly untrue, but there's some weird, like you just said, little factoid. And that's how they do it. That's how disinformation works. They'll use some iota of truth, and it's surrounded by falsehoods.
Assumptive language.
Yeah.
Saying things like, they'll say, James O'Keefe pushed the conspiracy theory that Antifa was responsible for the Capitol riots.
Right.
And then they'll argue in court. We didn't say that he asserted it as true. We say he pushed the theory because he was talking about it.
Like if I ask a question,
You're pushing the conspiracy theory.
I'm a reporter, right? So I ask questions for a living. So if I ask questions about whether Antifa was present, and then one reporter from Bloomberg says he implied it, Raw Story says he's pushing the theory.
Yep.
It's this crazy thing, and I
Once it makes it through a few sources, it'll be James O'Keefe asked a question about X. Then someone else copies that and says, according to source A, James O'Keefe was asking, it's implying that X was true. And then the third source says James O'Keefe said X. Then Wikipedia takes it, runs it. James O'Keefe believes in space.
It's like a game of telephone. And again, the further it goes, the crazier it gets. And people don't understand this because they don't see themselves doing this. But people need to understand the levels of depravity, the amount of lies, the amount of selective editing.
Is death. Now I'm going to sit down and lay some of this out for you right now. Finally, we're seeing.
Watching the American Journal with Harrison Smith.
The Alice Jones. No one's died of the vaccine. I'm going to show you coming up the CDC website admitting that one of the adverse reactions of the vaccine.
And that's what you were saying. They railroad people.
They railroad people, and I think Baquet in the New York Times' case, that article about our Minnesota video was the night of the presidential debate. They had a researcher lined up from Stanford. It wasn't Stanford University. It's some other Stanford, some unknown research group called Stanford. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. They called the guy. The reporter called the guy. They had a canned remark. Yeah, it's quote probably part of a disinformation campaign. Probably. And then the New York Times cited that researcher saying it's probably part. They put it in the headline. It was cross-referenced by USA Today. Facebook uses USA Today as their fact checker, and before you know it, 50 million people getting a notification saying the video is fake news. It's unbelievably effective.
Well, let's talk about the story you just broke.
Yeah.
And in talking about the censorship now. So you guys just put out this tweet. Mark Zuckerberg. Actually, I have the tweet right here. You tweeted, CEO Mark Zuckerberg takes anti-vax stance in violation of his own platform's policy. I'm not going to read his quote because, even though I know you already did, but they might try. I'll tell you what I do. When I read quotes, I'll do this. Quote, I share some caution on this vaccine because we, and this is Mark Zuckerberg saying this, just don't know the long-term, and again, Mark Zuckerberg, side effects of basically, and again, this is from Mark Zuckerberg's quote, modifying people's DNA, Mark Zuckerberg here, and RNA. No, I have to do that because
They'll selectively edit you.
Yes. No joke. Me reading something from Mark Zuckerberg, and they will splice together. Well, go ahead and splice it that many times if you really want to do it. Some people will. But this is Mark Zuckerberg basically saying something that, as far as I can tell, was never believed to be correct. When the research in the news was coming out about the mRNA vaccine, it was never true. It was always a conspiracy theory that it modified DNA. Now, at the time, it was not against Facebook's rules to claim that. That's my understanding. That's correct, right?
At the time, but recently Facebook announced that they are, quote, expanding their efforts to remove false claims on Facebook about the vaccine. So Mark Zuckerberg makes the statement in July where he's essentially violating Facebook's own policy. And the question is, I guess Mark Zuckerberg's thinking has evolved on the vaccine. And but it's a little bit strange because he's now just instituted this policy prohibiting what he was saying a few months ago.
Well, I think it's fair to say people's opinions change. And Mark Zuckerberg was clearly wrong in this. The mRNA, it essentially, it doesn't change your DNA. It just configures certain cells to produce the spike protein, and then when those cells die, that's it. That's the end of it. That's why there's actually multiple doses. That's why they say it doesn't work necessarily in the long term. But this was, I don't know what he was reading. Mark Zuckerberg was reading fake news. Now, it's fine, in my opinion, that he wants to have an opinion that's incorrect because people are wrong. Even Mark Zuckerberg. The real issue here, as you can see, and we were talking about this earlier, Zuckerberg is afforded the right to pontificate on things that were widely considered to be conspiracy theories at the time.
Right.
Whereas if I said the same thing, I would have been annihilated in the media. He's telling his own staffers this stuff. Now he's implementing this rule. And again, I'm not holding it against him that he changed his opinion, okay?
No.
But the authority is him. This is the problem. Who appointed Mark Zuckerberg to decide when and how we're allowed to think about things and share opinions?
Well, his own vice president, Nick Clegg, we had him on the leaked tape, basically saying they're just making this stuff up as they go. This is Nick Clegg, vice president of Facebook. He's a British guy, and he's on the, I guess they're on an oversight board. And they're basically playing the role of judge and jury of the Supreme Court. The Financial Times reported there is a growing trend. Tech companies think they should be deciding public policy, not government. And this is a prime example. This has nothing to do with my opinion about the vaccine or whatever, or Europe. It doesn't. The point is, Zuckerberg is the CEO of Facebook. And just a couple months ago, he was anti-vax. This is Mark Zuckerberg, not me, not you, not us. It's Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of maybe the most powerful company in the history of the planet Earth.
At a time when if you tweeted anything remotely anti-vax, they went after you hard.
But this is the CEO of Facebook anti-vax. On the record, not on the record, he's off the record. He's
But to
behind
his
closed
employees,
doors.
to a major...
I guess he's on the record to his own staff, his own executive committee, saying this. This is a whistleblower inside Facebook, folks, has given us this tape of Mark Zuckerberg. That is one of Mark's own colleagues, is a source to James O'Keefe, and is still a source to James O'Keefe. That's why those engineers are very careful right
That's
now.
pretty cool.
Pretty cool,
Yeah.
right? And Mark Zuckerberg, just a few months ago, said, I'm anti-vax. I think it changes your DNA. Again, Mark Zuckerberg's words, not mine.
It's too late. They got you.
But suddenly, now, Mark Zuckerberg has changed the policy. You're not allowed to even pontificate about the vaccine. Doesn't that seem a little capricious to you?
I think it's good that he finally realized he was wrong. I think this is actually included in your report that he did a public conversation with Dr. Fauci. And here's what I love about this, because I texted you when I saw this, and I was like, well, look, I get it if he changed his opinion. You guys fully included the dates of when he said it, the date of when he had a change of opinion. You're not hiding the fact that, and I think it's fair to point out that sometimes people's opinions change, and good for Mark Zuckerberg on realizing he was wrong. The issue is, if it's wrong to say it now, we knew it was wrong to say it back in July when he was telling his employees this. The point is, why was the rule just implemented? Why was Mark Zuckerberg allowed to push insane conspiracy theories to a massive company, Facebook? I guess the idea is if we're going to live under this rule about disinformation, you can clearly see that Mark Zuckerberg shares this information, and then it only changes when he realizes he was spreading this information.
In many ways, and this Nick Clegg, the vice president of Facebook, is admitting as much in a leaked tape, one of these leaked tapes, saying we're kind of having to come up with these rules. Think of it like the U.S. Constitution. Imagine the United States Constitution had very specific things that you're not allowed to say. One of them is you cannot speak about the COVID vaccine. I mean, that's what Facebook is saying. They're just making new things up that you can't talk about. And the analogy I draw is the Constitution of the United States is very clear. Congress shall make no law prohibiting the free exercise of the freedom of speech. But Facebook has these rules about certain subjects you're not allowed to pontificate about. And the audience, well, they're a private company. They can say what they want. I get they're a private company. But you can't lie. Lying is wrong. It's unethical.
I would even question the private government there. They work hand in hand with the government in many different ways. So I think they're even far from government agencies, not even from their seat funding, but from what they're doing now. So it's interesting because, I mean, people like to pontificate. That's the thing. When you get rid of conversation, when you censor it, when you stifle it, you spread a lot of these crazier theories, and then again, look at Twitter and Hunter Biden. This is one of the biggest media scandals of our generation. A news story broke Hunter Biden, Vice President Joe Biden, not President Don't worry, we're suppressing this story so people can't see it. And
then what, 2 weeks after the election was over, they're like, oh, that's true. It was true the whole time. That is bullshit. And so this goes hand in hand. I think you're looking for some consistency. The consistency would be Mark Zuckerberg says don't spread disinformation. We de-rank disinformation. They give power to these third-party fact-checking organizations, which just make stuff up, and they put out fake news themselves. Like my favorite was Snopes. How do you pretend to exaggerate the causes, the experience of the Capitol? False. Well, she wasn't in the Capitol. The Capitol was called no. AOC's story about the Capitol took place a full hour and 10 minutes before the building had been breached. So I think it is fair to have the opinion she did. Why then is Snopes given the ability to slap a warning label on my post, which is they didn't actually just be saying on your or anyone else's post. Snopes can now put their opinion over your opinion. If we're supposed to be living by a standard to stop disinformation, I think what we've now realized from the video you put out just now, this is the context I think you need to make sure people understand. That in July, it was a conspiracy theory to say what Mark Zuckerberg was saying, and he didn't care. He let people say it. Now he had the epiphany, so he makes the rules. That's the problem. Are we allowed to have these ideas and communicate, or is it only on Mark Zuckerberg to win the rules?
I mean, this is an extraordinary point, Tim. I mean, it's like a constitution. People need to understand these companies. Okay, now we're going to create a rule this week saying now let's talk about this. These are private companies. Again, this is from the Financial Times. Momentous decisions in the hands of private companies is not a long-term public policy solution. They neither have the legitimacy nor the capacity to make such decisions in public interest. These are Supreme Court. These are akin to Supreme Court decisions. For Facebook to say, okay, now you are not allowed to talk about vaccines. It will ban you. It's hold on. Is that powerful? But then if the United States Supreme Court were to pass a decision tomorrow saying you are not allowed to talk about red delicious apples.
So hold on. Is the rule actually that you can't talk about vaccines at all? Or?
I'm going to read the rule to you. This is last week, Mario, I believe that this is Facebook announced last week a new rule that said, quote, we are expanding efforts to remove false claims on Facebook and Instagram about COVID vaccines and vaccines in general.
So I wonder, it'd be really funny if like one day Mark Zuckerberg just like he meets somebody who has an epiphany, who becomes this crazy truth area and thinks meat is wrong.
Right.
And then passes a rule where he's like, I think that eating meat is just wrong and eating vegetables is also wrong. You know, a lot of people talk about not doing harm to animals, but you also harm the plant when you eat the vegetable. Fruits are actually meant to be eaten, so I think everyone should have to eat nothing but fruit and spread the seeds. So now we're going to ban anyone who promotes meat or advertising.
That's exactly right. Right. It's exactly what
It'd be
happened.
insane.
Because in July he said, no, this thing is, I'm an anti-vax guy and I think it modified DNA. This is like not 5-10 years ago. This was in 2020 he said this. And suddenly he had a change of heart. I mean, so I think that Facebook is more powerful than the United States Supreme Court. In fact, these tech companies have a powerful in every branches of government. So when they make a rule change that says you can't talk about something, it's as if the United States Supreme Court made a change about codify the United States Constitution.
Give me the ability to control what people say, and I care not who makes the
Well,
laws.
the thing is, okay, this is the big debate. This is it. This is the big debate of our times. They're private companies right now, and we don't have the right to seize their means of production as a company. That's very communist. If we were to say, okay, Facebook, now you're government controlled. We'll take the country. We're not going to do that.
We're not
So,
seeing the means of
so we're not going to make them create their own terms of service. We can't do that. That's a communistic takeover. We can't do that. Listen to me. The problem is these companies have a right to create their own terms, as does a restaurant. They don't want you talking about certain things in the restaurant. Get out of the restaurant. That's the restaurant owner's right. My concern is how do we move forward in the society with that
Right.
still being the case? And I can
It's
only
not the
find,
case.
yeah, please let me finish the thought, that we need to free the software code. It's the only way to allow other people to create software as powerful as Facebook with their own terms of service.
So you made several points there, and the premise of your final conclusion is incorrect, which is what I'm trying to address. Scale exists. If there is one person buying up all the farmland and now no one has food, the people have a right to say, nah, you can't do that. One small plot of farmland has a right to their sovereignty to grow their crops and be left alone. One person seizing every single opportunity for people to eat is very different. Facebook is not some small platform people use sometimes. It is one of the largest, if not it is the second largest website I think on the planet, on Google. And they essentially control the flow of information by monopolizing it. They've now used that monopoly power to control our politics. It is not the same thing as a restaurant. There's 50 different restaurants that are not chains I can go to. There's no other Facebook. The president is not on the platform.
Say, I agree, it is a monopoly, but if you look at Rockefeller, Standard Oil, they broke it up. That was the first monopoly, and all it did was make Rockefeller more rich. They created 6 new oil companies that he had stock in all 6. If they did this to Facebook, you'd have Facebook Prime, you'd have Facebook Messenger, you'd have
That's not
Instagram.
the answer.
And so, no, it's not the answer.
Right.
Breaking up Facebook is not the answer.
Regulations. Yes.
Regulating it by freeing the software code, yes.
Why would bring the software code?
Because it would give people the opportunity to create software as powerful with their own terms. And then people would migrate to the place with the terms.
You just advocated against seeking production. Now you're advocating for it.
No, I think that Facebook has a right to function, and I would never want to take it away from Mark.
The code is their means of
No,
production.
the least production is the website.
No, but the factory is, yes, what's the website made of, right?
Yeah.
So you want to give the secret sauce that makes their system work.
Yeah, but I'm not going to take their system.
That's what you're advocating.
No, I'm not taking, I don't want to take Facebook. I want to free the software code so other people can create more of them.
So you take it's different. They're allowed to keep their brand, but not the actual.
And the website, and all the marketing that goes through the website. Yes, of course. That's the only, that's the only capitalist solution I can find over the last
I
2
think
years.
you're talking about transparency. I mean, these platforms, they have the ability to amplify certain voices while excluding others. It's a product of scale economies, and their power comes from squeezing out alternative platforms while fueling this virality. And I think, I mean, I agree with you on one hand. I think it's about transparency. I'm biased, where I saw information I believe in. If we just expose how they do what they do, you're talking about like letting their competitors know how what do you mean by showing their what they're doing?
Access to the source code.
Access to the code.
So you can see how the algorithms work, how the code is built, how the software is built, so you can reuse it. And if you make it a free software code, if you take the software and change it and make it better, they would have access to your changes as well.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Interesting.
I don't know. I think the answer is, we had Will Chamberlain on the show talking about how Parler isn't the answer. We need platform access as a civil right to make sure people have the ability to use the platforms. But I gotta be honest, the problem is multifaceted. So I'll give you one example. Just because I'm allowed to use Twitter doesn't mean Twitter is functioning properly, right? So we talk about Facebook censorship and the capriciousness of their rule changes. Well, recently I quote tweeted Cassandra Fairbanks. She did a story about vans pulling up at the PCS Center and questions being raised about it. I said I didn't think the videos mattered. Whatever they do, prove or don't prove, I don't think they matter. Because Time Magazine wrote an article basically saying that the election was rigged. And then I thought, I'm sorry, they didn't say it was rigged. They say it was fortified by changing election laws and manipulating the flow of information. That's a fact. They didn't say it was rigged. That's what I said. They said it was fortified. Time Magazine wrote this article. Twitter blocked my tweet in all forms. You can't retweet it. You can't quote. You can't respond. You can't you can't respond, retweet, or like. And they put a tag saying this claim about fraud is disputed, but it's literally not disputed. Time Magazine wrote it. I was quoting Time Magazine. So I actually reached out to Jack and I said, could you remove this? It is a false statement of fact. Jack did not respond. But he responds sometimes. I talk to him every so often. We have this other story that's really funny, actually. And this exemplifies the great problem. Check this out. Twitter labels Indiana AG's tweet of Valentine's Day meme that election was stolen from Trump. This is hilarious. Todd Rokita tweeted, Happy Valentine's Day, and there's an image that says, you stole my heart like a 2020 election. Happy Valentine's Day. And Twitter says this claim of election fraud is disputed, and this tweet can't be replied to, retweeted, or liked due to a risk of violence.
That's it.
Memes. It's a meme. He's not literally saying there was fraud. He's mocking the idea. It's Donald Trump as a cartoon. He's making fun of it. You can't even post memes.
Yeah, they went after a couple of my memes too on Instagram, and Twitter just deleted them, and I didn't even know. And I'm like, wait, what's going on here? Why? I mean, they're satirical. They're meant to be funny. That's funny. That seriously. I don't think that's going to make anyone violent at all. And now we're at a phase where Instagram just announced a few days ago that they're going to be going and looking through your DMs, your private messages, looking for hate speech to go after.
That's not new.
I know, but them publicly announcing it, I think them
acknowledging and being so bold and emboldened by it is real.
We have to acknowledge the reality that these platforms, I think we've all been talking about this. They have a form of concentrated political power akin to basically a loaded gun on the table. They swing elections, they sway elections. So what do you do about it, right? That's what everyone says to me. Okay, stop and degrade. I kind of agree with you. I think it's exposing the reality, and you need an army of whistleblowers inside big tech.
Well, I've said it several times. I think the work you guys do is some of the most important work we have right now. And like just
Your show brought us Richard Hopkins. Last time I was on the show, the mailman from Pennsylvania, Erie, Pennsylvania, sent us an email after watching your show and blew the whistle on the postal service. Signed
Well,
an affidavit.
that's all you, man. I mean, we're just a bunch of people who sit around talking about stuff on the internet.
For whatever reason, he watches your show more than any other show, and he came to Veritas. Shameless plug. That's VERITAS tips at protonmail.com. It's encrypted. Hopefully, the NSA is not intercepting that email. And that Richard came to us, and Richard lost his job, Tim. Richard was fired from the Postal Service. First, he was suspended, then he was fired. By the way, I think that's important because he has skin in the game. He's an actual person who's going to lose his career for the public's right to know something. He's not just saying something, he's giving up his livelihood. Here's why I say what you do is so important, and actually why what Richard and others have done is even more important. I mean, for one, you can't do your job unless there's brave people willing to stand up and work with you to get that information out. More importantly, those brave people who are standing up are creating this atmosphere where these big shots, these fat cats, these corrupt individuals, not people looking over their shoulders, wondering who's going to say you can't do that. I'm going to people on Facebook now have to worry. Who's the person there who's going to share what they're saying? When they go to look at DMs, which is unconscionable and unethical for someone to browse private DMs. So the fact that whatever engineer coder's mind is before I look at the DM, I'd be worried if someone's looking at me. That psychological effect.
Exactly. And this is why they don't have any transparency or accountability to their actions. Because if they did, people would know what they can and cannot say. They don't want you knowing it because they want this fear effect. They want this chilling effect where you have to worry about your butt and worry about what you're thinking about. Because when you're censoring words, you're censoring what people can think, essentially. And we also have to understand on the bigger point here, these are not private, capitalistic, entrepreneurship organizations. Look at the seed funding, look where they came from. Look right now at their tax incentives, the visa programs, their data sharing surveillance programs, the government contracts that they receive. These are entities that are in line with a lot of government institutions that are working hand in hand together.
Anybody's government is downstream from these institutions.
Yes, and they work hand in hand, and they are pushing this agenda together. And I think once we address that, we have to understand these are not just private entities that are private companies pick and choose. They're not that at all. They are monopolies at least.
That's a great observation. I was thinking as we were talking that there could be some software developer that's like, I'm going to blow the whistle on Facebook. I'm going to deliver all the code to Project Veritas. That wouldn't work because unless we use the government to regulate these people and to actually change the software license and do it right, you could get rid of the code and they can just change it. So we have to acknowledge that these guys are basically quasi-government organizations who should be treated such.
Yeah, well, for the time being, I mean, things are demoralizing.
Yeah, I want to leave Twitter. I don't want to leave Twitter, but when I see the way they're treating it, it's like this ridiculous.
Well, I can tell you right now, there's someone watching this who does work for Twitter and Google. I guarantee it. And we have so many sources in this world beyond what we can fathom. I mean, we have untold dozens, over 100 whistleblowers right now, recording, watching. I'm talking about the CEOs of these companies. And if you're watching this right now, just like Richard Hopkins a few months ago, send us a note. I think the solution is exposure. I think they don't fear the United States government anymore. They all these people, these politicians, they almost like they suck up to CNN. All they ever do is go on to CNN. I don't even know what these Congress critters actually do. What do they actually do? Because all I ever see them doing is going on Instagram, which is owned by my company, and going on television. Do they actually create any laws? I guess they don't because government is in a state of sclerosis, so they can't pass legislation. United States Supreme Court changing the Constitution and saying, First Amendment applies, except when you talk about, applesauce.
You know something really crazy that I was reading, and guys, definitely if you're listening back to him, I was reading some conversation considering that Trump's own lawyer in the impeachment trial believed the very fine piece of close up until he had to research the evidence to defend Donald Trump. Then realized the media had been selectively editing what Trump had said, and Trump definitively denounced white supremacy after the trial. And well, the media cuts it out of context, like they did with the Shinzo Abe fish feeding thing. And this lawyer didn't know that about Trump until he was investigating because he had to go over the evidence. How many people think they're informed because they read the news? They read what Facebook allows to be shared, and they actually are just being fed garbage.
The amount of fake news, disinformation, and propaganda out there is absolutely insane to even fathom sometimes. It's like 1984 people to decide to just be
That's
repeated.
you know that's a real thing though.
Yes,
right?
I know. It's I've seen everything. I've seen it on social. James, the one question I really wanted to ask you here: when you got hit by Twitter, was there any alternative social media platform that you were looking into fully transitioning away from Twitter?
So I take a unique position on this because I may take a stance that you don't agree with or you don't agree with. I think that content is king. That I believe in distribution by proxy. In other words, if they ban me everywhere, which everyone's warning about, they ban me everywhere, and I get a hidden camera video of a federal judge taking a block. That's a 30-second video. I would simply send an email to my 500,000 people on my email list saying, please download this video and upload it to your Twitter. They can't ban every. So content is king. Content, not platform, is king. I've always believed that. Everyone wants to create another platform. I thought this in the back of my head about Parler. By the way, Parler got banned. Okay, we're gonna create another Parler. Parler's back. Parler's back. But and then I saw Parler ban Milo today, and now he's back. Oh, he's back too. Okay, well, there's all these updates about the platform, but at the end of the day, content is king. I didn't coin that phrase. That was the Viacom CEO. But I believe that what was going through my mind, Luke, was that content is king. A good story will diffuse its way and distribute its way, sort of like the black goo in the movie Prometheus. It will just sort of get out there and it'll be a new paradigm. I don't know what the name of the next or the future platform will be. What I do know is a good story is always lurking behind every corner. And again, distribution by proxy. So Telegram, we had 4,000 followers a couple weeks ago. Now we have 350,000 followers. And what we'll do is we'll send a Vimeo link and say, please download this clip and upload it into your Twitter. So if we're banned on Twitter, citizens can do it. What, we ban everyone? They can't do that.
This is the funny thing, when TikTok had a bullying problem, there were people being mocked for their appearance or their weight. They realized something. Whereas Twitter bans the hate speech to protect the minority, TikTok realized, well, if we want to stop the bullying, and we ban, say, 1,000 people bullying this person, that's 1,000 users we lose in our annual reports for our shareholders. Why don't we ban the person being bullied? Then there's no more bullying. So TikTok actually targeted the person who was a victim of the insults. That was clever. And I bring that up just because in the instance of Twitter, well, they can't ban everybody because then they're going to issue a report saying we lost X many users this quarter. Oh, we banned them because we didn't like what they had to say.
Yeah, and they can't ban us today because if they ban us for the Zuckerberg story, every reporter that talks about it will have to say, there's no guts in here, Zuckerberg on the page. You know what the problem is right now, though? It's not fun anymore. It's not what? It's not fun. Twitter used to be fun.
No, it's terrible.
But they're getting rid of interesting people. Seeing a Trump tweet was hilarious. The journalists read panic attacks when Trump would tweet it. But I thought it would be funny when Trump would tweet something really silly, like, not that he should have most of the time, but sometimes he would tweet funny and silly things. What did he tweet? Oh yeah, when Elizabeth Warren was drinking the beer, remember this? And her husband walks up, and then she's like, thanks for being here. Trump tweets, what do you mean? He's supposed to be there. It's his house. That was hilarious. It made it exciting. They're getting rid of anything that's like even remotely interesting on the platform.
I mean, and if they ban us today for publishing a video clip of Zuckerberg, every reporter reporting a ban will have to include the fact that Mark Zuckerberg said that's why they will ban us. Sam, I think there's a lot to this whole litigation.
That's a good
People
one.
I mean that. I have my producer just texted me, that's genius. You know, helping others with litigation. That's a really important idea because so many people get defamed, and we have a recourse in the theory of defamation,
Especially if you're a public figure.
It's, and I'm a public figure. I have to prove what's called actual veracity. I have to prove the person knew they were lying about me when they lied. But a non-public figure, if you're railroad discovery, this is a really good idea. I think people, the reason people haven't done this is because they don't know they can do it. It takes, I call it balls, resources, and willpower. Balls or huevos. Where did some huevos? Huevos. That's the flip expression now. Yes. And I think it's a great idea. I think it's an excellent
We
idea.
call it the People's Defamation Fund PDF.
Yeah, PDF files.
Yeah.
And people already, starting to get their mind PDF.
Well, they say the idea is 1% of it, 99% of the execution, but still.
I think if you launched, not a GoFundMe, because they would ban you in 2
It's
seconds.
banned, yeah.
But if you launched any one of his other any other fundraisers, you'd instantly raise enough to just hire an executive manager or whatever to run the fund.
Listen, I'm gonna say it on your show right now. If we get the New York Times to give us money, which I'm betting my reputation on this, it's going to happen. We're gonna use some of those proceeds to start this idea that we have. I like this idea. I think it is idea. The idea that you have.
It doesn't matter. But
I
another
named
thing,
it.
but another thing I mean, I remember starting off, and when I was still just, no one, not a big reputation, getting slandered and attacked by the mainstream media, and also other instances where they literally took my videos that I did, my live reporting on protest, and they claimed it as theirs so many times.
Didn't they call you like a non-shrinking violet or something?
Yes, that was the New York
What was that
Times.
quote?
That was in Lou Bernowski is armed with a video camera and a YouTube channel, and definitely is not a shrinking violet.
Nice.
That was the New York Times perspective, and that was actually fair reporting on their part, which is really interesting because they actually quoted me correctly when other news organizations literally took quotes out of context, put them together to make them sound bad, whereas if I was pushing for some kind of violent action, which I of course never was, I believe in total nonviolence, always have advocated for that. But for them, especially when I was starting off, especially when I didn't have a big following, they would just take everything I did. Take my live reporting, take my photos, take my videos, claim it as theirs, and then when I became grounded, they started slandering me. I'm like, what's going on here? I actually started talking to some lawyers, and let's just say they don't steal my videos, they don't steal my photos anymore.
A lot has changed in the last 7-8 years. The world has changed. The New York Times went real.
Yeah, we were talking about this yesterday with Will because even with that New York Times weapons of mass destruction line, there was still some kind of understanding that the New York Times tried to tell the story. And even then, when they got caught with the WMDs, they admitted it, they talked about it, there was some repercussions behind it. Now, they faced some real actions because of that. Still, not enough comparatively to the lie that they sold on American public and the hundreds of thousands of people that died and the radicalization and immigration crisis that came out of it. But still not enough. There was still this kind of veiled understanding that they're trying. I mean, that they're going to do their best. They even interviewed me a couple of times when they did honest, real reporting that the all that stuff. That whole perception, the whole understanding that they're not even trying anymore. They're blatantly slapping the American people upside the face. They're obsessing about race. They're obsessing about all this other stuff that divide and conquers us, and we fight each other, and we don't focus on the real issues, the actual things that do affect us. Especially after 2012, their decline is evident, and they're not the same New York Times that they're known for.
Let's jump to super chats, and normally I like to read as many as possible, but I'm gonna try and find as many questions for James as possible. Because a lot of the comments are just general comments on stories, and forgive me if you guys, I will read a bunch of super chats. Don't get me wrong, but I think it's a good opportunity for people to get questions in for James if they haven't had a chance to. I'll start with one of the most important. Aurora Isabella says, this is a statement, James O'Keefe is hot AF with a sweating face. That's very important to let you know that they did.
Modeling shots.
Riley Luan says, James, how can I help? I've got media skills, CGI, but no real revenue source at the moment, and I'm certainly not afraid of speaking out online or in real life. How can I best help to take these corrupt tables down?
So Prager says there's three, so it's a camera on your body, you can find someone in your network who works for an organization that wants to blow the whistle to be your citizen, or Riley, or you could donate a tax-exempt donation to Project Earth. Those are your two options. Pick one.
Colin Stevens says, Tim, please recommend that James reach out to Nick Recchietta of Recchietta Law. He's also a YouTuber and has talked about building a support network of lawyers for situations like this before. Nick Recchietta? Yes.
I think that's the guy who's moving.
Yeah. No, that's not the.
How do you spell the last name?
Rekieta.
Oh.
Right, this is a YouTuber.
Sent to my team. Thank you.
Mitch Stew says, I tried posting a positive comment about James multiple times. It kept giving me an error message and took a screenshot. Tim, it's the same thing with your live stream title, James is the new Alex Jones.
Hey, listen, if that happens, videotape your screen. I mean, like, I get messages like this all the time. Some from my phone, some from my reel. I mean, I'm sure it happens. Again, what's more interesting is a hidden camera video of the engineer or the coder in real time eating Doritos, high-fiving each other. Let's mess with James O'Keefe's Insta page. That's the video I want.
Or stopping us
We're
from
looking at this is not me. I'm quoting somebody. The dick pics on Twitter. Remember that guy, Clay Haynes from Twitter? Clay Haynes from Twitter. We got him on hidden camera in San Francisco, bragging about him. We look at people's dick pics on the DMs. I mean, that was extraordinary. I want to see those videotapes.
Yeah, the NSA was doing that before it was cool enough. They were doing that over 10 years ago.
But we need the videotape of the NSA
Yeah.
people doing it.
James.
Well, NSA officers got caught spanking it to people's private images. I confronted General Hazen about this. He denied it, and I had to confront him with the actual news article. And he's like,
Is Hayden the one that lied under oath about the Fourth Amendment stuff?
it's hard to know because all of them lied under oath, especially for former CIA. And we have Mike Trump bragging about it.
Really, like, scratched his head like, on James Clapper. It was like, this guy's a spy, and he's like the worst liar. Not kidding you. You don't spy on people. If you're gonna lie, at least try to like.
Well, Mike Pompeo says they get taught how to lie, steal,
That was the
cheat.
worst.
That's either.
That was the worst lying ever.
Yeah.
It was like a spook. Like I did not spy. I mean, at least these are bad spies.
Yeah, think about the amount of viewership we've lost because we couldn't include your name in the title.
The amount of viewership you lost. We include my name.
We put the name of our guests in the title of the show so people know. Because often, when we have, say, Jack Murphy or Will or James O'Keefe, there are a lot of people who maybe wouldn't normally watch the show but want to see this particular perspective. When you tried to stream with your name in it, it didn't work. When I changed title, removing your name, it worked. Now the title is YouTube is giving us the business, won't let us stream. A lot of people are clicking to see what's going on, and they're like, oh, whoa, it's James.
Oh man.
Imagine if they got an email notification saying James O'Keefe on the show.
You're like times 40, 50%.
Well, it would be
times 80%.
all people want to hear what you had to say. And it's not just about you, James, it's about any other guest we would have where it, for some reason, it's not allowing us to do it. Now, I'll tell you this. Is it possible? Was it a crazy old glitch?
It is possible.
Just a glitch, Yeah, well, I'm sorry. I'm at the point in my life where the glitches always flow in one direction.
Conspiracy.
No. So what I'm saying is, at a certain point, you want to say that make the least amount of assumptions. Someone correct me on razor. What is more likely? Well, when we know they actively censor conservatives, when they literally just suspended Project Veritas on Twitter for ridiculous BS reasons, and we know they did, and then I tried to have James on the show with his name in the title, and it doesn't work. I think it's simpler to say,
Glitches happen.
but they happen, like, come on, man, at a certain point, there are more assumptions in. It just so happens that James is being censored at the exact same time.
These glitches only happen when it's me doing it, but you know how many people are having that experience? Again, it only happens to you.
The truth is very powerful. St. Augustine said the truth is like a line. I'd like to hear more questions.
Oh, yeah, but I have to go through and find more.
Sure.
All right, let's see. Have to go through them. So I'll grab some for in the meantime if we scroll, because there's a lot. I don't want to leave people out. Milton Bradley said, I'm sorry, not Elusive Gator says, Tim, would you be willing to invite Don Jr., Trump's son, on your show? Would you invite him? Yes, 100%. Whenever you like, come on. Tom Saltzman says, hi, Tim. Could you and your crew please start a real fact-checking website? We are absolutely planning on doing that, but I'm also curious if you guys are planning on doing that. Any kind of
A real fact-checking website. So
Or just general report. I know you guys do investigative work.
yeah, but what about? I think we have to focus on our sort of mission, which is to be the answer to the question, "What can I do?" I was talking to a very popular host of a major news television. He said, "Everyone asks, what can I do?" And I feel like that's my purpose in life, is to be the answer to that. So I have to keep focused. I don't want to lose my focus and be a fact checking of everything.
Well, that makes another question. Stan T00 says, James, love your work. Curious, has any leftist submitted stories versus conservative parties to Project Veritas? Keep up the great work.
Leftist submitted stories in the sense of exposing
Conservatives. I think he's saying, have you gotten leftists trying to expose conservatives?
if someone's doing something wrong or corrupt, I'll publish it. I did a story on a Republican ballot harvester in Texas that she was arrested by the attorney general of Rodriguez in New Hampshire. The attorney general of New Hampshire Republican who voted multiple times. So at the end of the day, I was Jeffrey Epstein, owned by Disney, and this is reporting Amy Robot. This was a non-Republican. I think Veritas over time will expand and
I love the idea when they claim to be part of leftist groups, and you went after, you've investigated who goes to Washington Post and
yeah.
sort of a tacit
What is that?
invitation these institutions are leftist.
You only go after left-wing groups like the New York Times. Okay, well,
With all these barriers of discussion, lockdown and censorship, what do you see we can do to help affect public opinion? I have thought about getting more involved in local government. Thoughts? Keep it simple and a real much love.
and I thought you put this because I'm a career journalist. I didn't know if that was
It's Alex Jones created the
coincidence. Skin in the game is a term that my colleague Eric Cochran used, who blew the whistle on Pinterest. Eric Cochran said, I have to have skin in the game. Beginning to wake up and understand that we have to be the media. Stop complaining about how biased they are and just go out and do their jobs. I mean, when I did the Acorn story 10 years ago, I walked in to Baltimore, Maryland. My colleague Hannah was dressed as a Miami hooker. She was 20 years old. And within minutes, these pseudo-government agents were telling us how to disguise underage hookers as dependents on our tax forms. It was amazing how easy it was to just get people to just talk. Just be a journalist, to go out and do it. And you don't need that much training. Just take a camera and go start asking questions.
And Jon Stewart saying war phrases, saying, journalists, where are you? Look at this kid. Look what he's
The
doing.
United States Senate voted 83-7, the Democratically controlled House and Senate to defund Acorn. That was 10 years ago. And this is a girl that messaged me, Hannah messaged me on Facebook. I've never met her before. She said, James, we think it'd be a good idea to go into Acorn dressed as a hooker. Now, most people get these sorts of DMs, slide into the DM. And they delete them as spam. I said, that's a great idea. There should be a pimp in the situation. And, be a citizen journalist. Go out there and just go do it.
Robert Bettel says, he who controls the feed controls the world. I propose forcing by law the algorithm to be open source, and the choice of which algorithm and third-party filter service be moved to the end user. I think it gets really, a bit esoteric when talking about the code and the source and how we deal with that. And that's one of the challenges. They rely on this not only opaque system, but even if they did release the code, most people are looking at it and saying, I have no idea.
I have a different perspective a little bit than you. I think the solution is for the CEO or the vice president of this company to come out and say, in Congress, we are trying to elect Democrats. If they just said that, I'd be happy. It'd be a start. It'd be a good start. Because of the code or whatever it is, I'm not an engineer, so excuse me, but whatever it is that we're talking about here, somewhere in that code shows them targeting, shadow banning. Let's say, Tim, we had a San Francisco engineer at Google quite literally writing code as we speak, targeting this podcast. he was under oath in Congress, and he said, Congressman Smith, I targeted Tim Pool's podcast, and here's the code showing me doing it because I hate Tim Pool. I want to destroy James O'Keefe, and I want to elect Democrats. Thank you very much. I'd be very happy.
My problem with relying on the CEO's executive is that it's not a good and evil thing for me. It's a thing about it's justice. Because if you rely on the CEO to do the right thing and reveal themselves, they're going to sell the company, and then you're going to have to rely on another human, and that allows for corruption to breed. I just think the system should be transparent, and not even open source, but free software like GPL, General Public License, or the MIT license, so that if changes are made to it, those changes are also free and open.
The challenge, James, with what you were saying about the guy saying, here's the code, is that they're not going to say that. I mean, I'd love it too. They're going to do what we've already seen these big tech companies do. There is no bias. We do not ban people for public opinion, for their political opinions. And then they just say, we only ban for rule violations. And our rules are extremely specific and politically
Do you think
motivated.
it's cognitive dissonance? Do you think they've convinced themselves? Do you think
Yes.
secretly?
I mean, just look at the. I know this brought up so often, but the Joe Rogan episode with it was me, Joe, when Jack didn't understand. When I told him to his face, your rules are biased against conservatives. He said, we don't ban people for being conservative for their political opinions. I said, yes, you do, because your rules are biased against
So this
conservatives.
is from the Orwell book, 1984, where their cognitive dissonance is to such a degree where they've actually convinced themselves not to actually internalize or think of the word doublethink, because in doing so, they're admitting they're tampering with reality. So you're saying psychologically, even when they tuck themselves under the covers at night, they don't individually and personally think that they're helping Democrats? Is that what you're saying?
So in the instance of Jack Dorsey, it was a really fascinating revelation. When I told him, you have a policy against misgendering people. To conservative Americans, of which half the country, or a little bit more, a little bit less, they believe that if someone is born biologically male, you must use, he, him pronouns. Whereas the left believes it's based on identity. Those are two different worldviews. Your rule set penalizes the conservative worldview. Therefore, a conservative who expresses their worldview will be banned from your platform. Your rules are biased against the conservative worldview. And it was like the first time he had ever heard that. Like he didn't realize. In their minds, 99.9% of Americans hate Donald Trump, are all progressives, and it's just this silly fringe far right. Oh, those dang far right. How did 75 million people vote for Donald Trump? They were tricked by lies. That must be it. It's like the Principal Skinner meme. Am I out of touch? No, it's the children who are wrong. That's them. They don't get it, no matter how many times.
Torn limb from limb by the new academic majorities that have been brought in. So this is just classic divide and conquer in a 21st century stratum. Now let's go ahead and go to this next angle. While we're all busy fighting with each other over what color we are or our religion, the globalists are organizing the UN to make it basically illegal to criticize somebody else's religion. So you can't even stand up and have your own religion because they're creating a crisis of tension. And then they're going to say you've got to submit to our one world government religion that is the answer out of this Hegelian dialectic after they cringe.
Leading a frontal assault on the lies of the New World Order, it's Alex Jones.
It's Tuesday, February 16th, 2021, and it is officially in Forbes, CNN, and the Austin American Statesman that the windmills in West Texas under the new Green Deal of Barack Obama are the reason that Texas is without power in many areas of the state, including still 40% in Austin, Texas. This is all a conditioning mechanism to train the public to accept, to pay more for less. It's actually in some of the UN documents to begin doing.
Vi bör kunna spåra tillbaka till specialister som pekar direkt ut den här pojkens skador. Uppenbart att han hade utsatt för sexuella övergrepp. Vad gör då media, SVT? De skapar en dokumentär som heter Rädda Barn. Och varför jag berättar om här är att jag vill visa för att det här, så här systemet fungerar i ett korrupt samhälle. De kallar det Rädda Barn. Det finns ingenting som talar emot att de bara emot. Bry Agneta, som är en frivillig organisation, som är ett hot mot det här korrupta systemet. Så jag ser den här dokumentären, att Rädda Barn, som ren ondska, som ren splittring. Ni kan ju också fundera på vem den här journalisten är. Han har alltså fått utländska priser, svenska priser, han är upphöjd och hyllad. Och varför är han engagerad i ett så kallat familjemål som är pågående? Och där SVT ska vara oberoende. Det är ett skämt. Och det är ett brott. Och det är omoraliskt. Jag ställer mig här mitt där. Nu är det flera kvinnor här som vet det. Det är mina systrar som stöttar mig här. Det är bra. Det här kommer då när han blir examinerad, börjar patrullera Rinkeby. Och som sagt, jag älskar människor. Det är som de inte riktigt. Då gör han bevis. Och det fanns många sådana grejer som uppkom hela tiden. Det gör det att kriminella som var notoriska våldsmän till Rostingen släpptes ut för en. Det kunde inte tro att det är sant. Det blev det så fort att vi använde åklagarmyndigheten för att de var så vårdslösa. Då hade det gått ganska långt. Ja. Så ju djupare vi grävde, ju mer motstånd fick vi. Och det har blivit för mig en metod att söka motståndet. För där ligger nämligen lögnen och hindrar sanningen. Så ju mer motstånd du har, så närmare sanningen. Så vad jag fann, det var att Sveriges korruption är mer institutionaliserad. Det ligger på ett mycket mer avancerad nivå än att det är på gatunivå. Det är vissa chefer i vissa myndigheter personer som styr utredningar, påverkar domar och påverkar vår politik. Den institutionaliserade korruptionen i Sverige anser jag vara större än i många andra länder. Absolut. Det är institutionaliserad. Och den här bilden tycker jag visar ganska mycket. Vem som bestämmer är de som är i bakgrunden. De som har pengarna. Så vad som händer med oss människor på vardag, det är inte intressant. Det som är intressant är de som börjar vakna. Och att vara vaken, det innebär en fara för det här gruppen. Det korrupta systemet, nätverken som jag upplevde genom de här motstånden, det är det som jag kallar för satanism. Och satanism är inte det som vi kanske till vardags tänker satanism, utan det handlar om en kultur som är väldigt, väldigt gammal. Det handlar om en attityd om att du själv kan vara Gud och göra andra förslag. Det handlar om att vara fri från all moral. Det kan vara helt omoraliskt. Det kan handla om att ta för dig själv, ta från andra. Det handlar om bygga. Det handlar om att bete sig innan det blir rätt. Det är alltså det starkaste överlevande i den situationen. Den här satanismen kommer långt tillbaka från Babylon. 3000 år. Där man i Babylon och det riket hade en gud som heter Moloch. Och Moloch den godklädda guden som man byggde som offrade barn. Och den kulturen spred sig till Grekland, till Kronos, med guden där och i Rom heter han, Saturnus. Så därför blev det Saturn, det blev Satan. Och det är den förklaringen. Och guden Saturnus, det var den som styrde över makt, lagar, krig och det var dödsriket. Så den sataniska kulturen är att man hyllar döden, vålden. Och titta bara på våra media idag, våra filmer. Hur mycket man hyllar mot våld och annat. Så, och i Norden så heter den här sataniska kulturen Orden. Som man offrade till Orden. Och jag ser också att de här kulturerna kommer från Babylon. Och vikingarna, de gjorde sig rika på staten. Man offrade Orden i Norden. Orden i Norden. Okay. Och där har vi också den gamla tekniken att splittra. Splittra människor, splittra moral. Och skrämma människor. Det är genom rädsla man får människor att tappa balansen. Och att skäl. Det är ju väl, ni är säkert upptäckning, att man skrämmer dem. Då gör man något annat. Att skrämma barn till exempel, då kan man stjäla godis från sin räkning. Så att skrämmas har varit en väldigt dominant och viktig del i den sataniska kulturen. För i detta så går det bara om människor inte är karaktärsstarka. Om vi inte gör det, kan vi inte det. Och så länge vi är rädda och utsatta. Och där ingår också den hemska kulturen kring pedofili. Jag anser inte att pedofili är någonting naturligt. Jag anser att det är en sjukdom, en skada, ett särskilt demon. För en tid sedan så pratade vi mycket. Och jag sa till honom så här att vi måste prata om demoner. Och risken för att man skulle låta helt galen. Så hade det kommit till mig. Jag hade pockat på min uppmärksamhet hela tiden. Jag måste prata om demoner. Det blir bara kom till mig. Och om jag börjar prata om demoner så kommer folk tycka att jag är galen. Mer än anser. Men till slut så sa jag det. Micke, vi måste prata om demoner. Och Micke och sen underbar människa. Han bara, ja, det måste vi. Och det som hände när vi pratade om demoner, det var att vi fick en fantastisk gehör för så många människor. Jag har fått så mycket och meddelande för människor som också varit och upplevt demoner. Det är någon som har upplevt demoner. Det är demoner. Ja, det är många människor. Och jag har sett det så många gånger i olika ingripanden där människor är, det är inte människor jag mött. Det är ett öde. Det är helt otroligt. Och jag anser också att pedofilin, det är någon form av demonisk verksamhet. Där människor blir påverkade att skada människan i djupet av brottsligheten. Och varför pedofilin är viktig i sataniska kultur? Jo, för det skapar makt över andra. För det här barnet blir hjärnskadad. Det blir nervskadad för resten av sitt liv. Det finns idag nya möjligheter med att behandla behandling. Men den blir väldigt, väldigt vanlig. Och blir beroendestämd. Så barnet ger upp sig själv inför vuxenvärlden. Och så fortsätter den här barnet att växa upp bakom livskraft. Gå in i droger. Självmord är jättevanligt. Och våld. Så det finns. Det är alltså en viktig agenda för den sataniska kulturen. Att begå krig emot mänskligheten. Begå krig på familjen. För kärleken mellan man korrupta systemet som det sataniska kulturen ska skapa är betydligt djupare än att man backar över pengar. Det tänker jag oftast, i alla fall jag. Att korruption är så här, jag betalade extra för dumma i fängelse. Men det är mycket, mycket djupare. Det handlar om båda nätverk, det handlar om en kultur. Och det ser man genom frimureri bland annat. Det finns hemliga överenskommelser att du kan inte säga nej till en annan broder. Om du är tjänsteman och har då ett ärende på en broder kan du inte smeka. Du är inte korrumperad. Rent moraliskt också, hela vårt system. Så därför definitionen att förstå vad korruption är, det är av det etiska ordet. Eller väl, det är naturligt ordet korruption, som betyder korruption. Och jag menar på att det är ett moralförfall. För har du ett moralförfall så är det fel goda. För återigen så handlar det om att stå upp för våra moral. Världsbanken däremot och många andra lagar och förordningar och fokuserar på det här med privat vinning. Att de kan nämligen komma undan. Det var inte så att nej, det var dina ersättningar. Det är en kurs. Vi står bakom eran kurs. Som är mycket mer djupgående. I som matten. Så man ju liten på den matta filmen och man gjorde bra som det här. Så djupt är den här korrupta systemen. Man överlåter sig själv till varandra som man har hållhaka på dem. I brottsbalken så handlar det också om en otillbörlig fördel i sin offentliga eller i annan arbete. Och förfall skapar för mig en mycket större tydlighet för vad är det jag letar efter. Vad är korruption? Och det som korrumperas är ju våra lagar. Återigen, grundlagen som för oss tillsammans, som ska skydda oss. Där folket är vi som har makten. Det är folkstyre. All offentlig makt ska utgå från folket. Så i vår demokrati så har vi överlåtit det till politiker. Att en gång var 4:e år så får vi rösta. Så vilken politisk viktighet vi ska ta på den här. Det är det som vi har som demokrati. Och där vi har ett system som är moralfattigt. Vi överlåter det till moralfattiga politiker. Som då är de som skapar lagarna genom riksdagen. Så har vi ett problem. Vi behöver återta våra lagar och våra offentliga. Och den offentliga makten är 3 delar. Den verkställande makten. Som bland annat handlar om regeringen, handlar om olika myndigheterna. Det är ju den lagstiftande, riksdagen, stiftar lagar. Och det är den dömande makten, det är domstolen. Och tittar man noga på det här så ser man att det är politiker överallt. Det är domstolen som är politiker. Så den som kan välja ut den här politikern får välja på har korrumperat hela systemet. Moral. Ert engagemang när jag frågade er vad är moral när vi kör igång och skapar en vulkan. Det var dagens bästa gåva. Och moral, jag tog bilden av Jesus. Det är nog den vackraste bild jag har av Jesus. Av den stora kärleken. Han gav oss kärleken. Och som jag ser det. Jag har ju, sen jag var liten, som jag var 4 år gammal, varit väldigt spirituell. Jag såg saker, kände saker, kunde läsa av saker i min andlighet. Men det är först för, att säga, 2 år sedan tillbaka som jag blev kristen. Och med kristen menar jag inte religiös. Med kristen menar jag kristen. Jag lär mig av Jesus. Som står för moral. Han står för kärlek. Och det är ju väldigt otrevligt av det. Och någonting som har hänt med mig där idag är att skapa en relation. Det är viktigt. Jag har blivit lugn. Min system är mindre splittrat. Det är mer i enighet. Det är väldigt intressant. Jag rekommenderar. Moral, hörni, det kommer av en regel, en levnadsregel. Och de gamla grekerna som Sokrates, Platon och Sokrates på människan till 500 före Kristus. De levde i en värld där bygden och moralen var absolut det viktigaste. Utan moral så var det livet inte värt att leva. Moralen var det som vi kunde känna i stort. Att vara god, det var viktigast. Var det viktigt? För moral kommer av ordet moraliskt. Som betyder det som alltså förkovras i oss människor, kultiveras i oss människor under lång tid. Som kan man leva som ett alternativ. Och det handlar faktiskt om att inte bara vara Platon, som var då en student i Sokrates. Han sa det, det duger inte bara att vara god. Du måste också handla god. Göra världen god. Det går utan till. Jag kände det. Jag fick blicken, va? Ja, okej. Och så bekvämt att det. Det är för att min fina satsning är så vacker. Och som finns där. Och att vara den goda människan, att göra gott, det är det goda samhället. Och det är inget annat än Gud igen. Det goda kommer från Gud. Gud är Gud. Det är så vi har kommit. Och där vi har kommit ifrån. Det goda. Och de här filosoferna som levde på antiken, som bland annat stoiker, där man utvecklade karaktären, tålamodet, kärleken, klarheten och också det här samtalet. De levde efter idén. Det är idén som är absolut det viktigaste. Om man ansåg att ska man vara politiker, då måste man vara filosof. För en filosof har inte intresserad av makt. Den är bara där för tiden. Så plikten att handla, det handlar om moral. Jag pratar om stridsmoral. Det tycker man betyder om det. Så moral, att göra gott, är stort. Och i antiken så pratar man om de 4 kardinalsdygderna, om modet. Modet att stå kvar. Modet att stå upp för vem du är. Modet att stå upp för sanning. Pratar om rättstrogen. Att hålla sig till dygderna och känna vad som är rätt. Att stå upp för det. Klok. Visdom. Att kunna göra goda bedömningar. Måttfullhet. Att vara en god och balanserad människa. Alltså, det behöver inte mycket mer att jobba på det. Det där är tillräckligt för att utveckla sig själv till en karaktärsfull, moraliskt god människa. Bristen på moral, det är att det är det priset som de goda människorna får betala för sin likgiltighet. I bristen då för vår politik och våra affärer i vårt samhälle. Att vi blir styrda av onda människor. Det är Platons säger. Och Platon, han var en väldigt för demokratin. Demokratin kom från Grekland i antiken. Men han var väldigt skeptisk till demokratin. För den var så sårbar. Det var så lätt att manipulera den. Han såg det som en stor fara. Att demokratin var så känslig. Och det ser vi idag med partier. Att parter som ska bråka med varandra. Vi ska splittras. Och det är har jag varit aktiv. Jag kände stormen här ute, den här gruppen, hur vulkanen, vad lätt den kan bli. Så jag tänkte att vi gör en övning. Och jag vill ge er övningen att träna sömn. Och så tänkte jag att ni first farming of the full day, fruitful stars after Shankaranti. The first full moon day is called as Thaipusam. Largely in the country, in the larger part of the country, it is known as the Dhanya Purnima. Dhanya means it is a full moon of fulfillment. In many ways, because of the nature of what happens on this planet,